Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Paper Trail. Clint Stout had built his life on precision. 20 years in the military, decorated Marine Corps colonel, had taught him that details mattered. The difference between life and death often came down to noticing what others missed. Now, at 42, that same attention to detail had made him successful in private security consulting, protecting executives and government officials who couldn't afford mistakes. But nothing had prepared him for the sight of his 4-year-old daughter, Emma, crying alone in their pristine living room, clutching a crumpled piece of paper like it might disappear if she let go. "What's wrong, princess?" Clint asked, his voice automatically softening as he lifted Emma into his arms. Her small body trembled against his chest, tear-streaked cheeks pressed against his tactical shirt that still smelled of gunpowder from the shooting range. "Mommy said we don't need you anymore because there's another baby coming," Emma whispered through broken sobs. "She said I have to go away too." The words hit Clint like shrapnel. He gently pried the paper from Emma's tiny fists, his trained eyes immediately scanning the official letterhead, Parental Rights Relinquishment Form. His name was typed clearly in the section marked Terminating Parent, with Sherry's signature already dried in blue ink at the bottom. Clint's jaw tightened as he read further. The form indicated voluntary surrender of parental rights for Emma Rose Stout to facilitate new family arrangements. His wife's handwriting filled the margins with notes about simplified adoption procedures and clean transitions. "Where's Mommy now?" Clint asked, keeping his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. "She left with Uncle Javier to go shopping for baby things," Emma sniffled. "She said not to tell you, but I don't want to go away, Daddy." Uncle Javier. Javier Barker, Sherry's old friend from college who'd been coming around more frequently over the past 6 months. Clint had noticed, but hadn't thought much of it. Sherry had always been social, and Javier worked in real estate, often helping families relocate. Clint carried Emma to the kitchen, his mind already shifting into tactical mode. He called Sherry's phone, straight to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. "Emma, I need you to go play in your room while Daddy makes some phone calls, okay? And don't worry, you're not going anywhere. Daddy promises." As Emma reluctantly headed upstairs, Clint pulled out his secure phone, the one he used for work that couldn't be easily traced or monitored. His first call was to his longtime friend and tech specialist, Austin Snyder. "Austin, I need a favor. Full digital workup on Sherry Kirkpatrick, maiden name, and Javier Barker. Phone records, financial transactions, social media, everything. And I need it tonight." "Jesus, Clint, what's going on?" "Just do it. Bill it to my personal account." His second call was to Vernon Benjamin, a private investigator who specialized in infidelity cases and had former NSA connections. "Vernon, emergency job. I need surveillance on 2 targets starting immediately." Clint provided the details, including Sherry's car description and Javier's address. By the time Emma was asleep 3 hours later, Clint had established a command center in his home office. The relinquishment form was spread across his desk alongside printed bank statements he'd pulled from their joint accounts. What he found made his blood run cold. Over the past 4 months, Sherry had been systematically draining their savings. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $800 there, but escalating to larger withdrawals. In total, nearly $47,000 was gone. The timing coincided perfectly with increased activity on her credit cards at high-end restaurants, hotels, and baby stores. But the most damning evidence was a hotel receipt he found in her purse. 3 nights at the Marriott downtown, charged to her personal credit card, dated last week when she claimed to be visiting her sick aunt in Phoenix. Clint studied the timeline, cross-referencing dates with his own travel schedule. Every hotel charge, every expensive dinner, every suspicious withdrawal aligned with his business trips. Sherry and Javier had been playing house for months, using his money to fund their affair while planning to eliminate him and Emma from the picture. His phone buzzed with a text from Vernon. "Targets located. Extended stay hotel on Riverside. Unit 237. They're not alone. Third party present. Appears to be preparing for long-term residency." Clint's hands clenched into fists. Not only were they planning to steal his daughter and his money, but they'd already moved into their love nest. The third party was likely Javier's legal contact, probably drawing up more paperwork to expedite the adoption process. As he sat in the dark, studying the evidence, Clint made a decision that would change everything. He'd spent his entire career protecting others, following rules, working within systems. But this wasn't about justice. This was about war. And in war, there were no rules except victory. He opened his laptop and began researching Javier Barker's background. What he found was interesting. A real estate agent with a questionable reputation, recently divorced, with a history of relationship hopping and financial instability. More importantly, Javier had gambling debts with some very unfriendly people. Clint smiled for the first time that day. He was going to give Javier and Sherry exactly what they deserved, but they'd never see it coming. Chapter 2. The Hunter's Moon. The next morning, Clint dropped Emma off at his mother-in-law's house under the pretense of a sudden business emergency. Lucy Hanson had never liked him much, but she adored Emma, and Clint knew his daughter would be safe there while he began his campaign. Sherry still wasn't answering her phone, but Clint had other ways of gathering intelligence. He drove to her sister's house first. Arlene Kelly, a nurse who lived across town and had always been the more sensible of the Kirkpatrick sisters. "Clint, what are you doing here?" Arlene opened the door, clearly surprised. She was still in her scrubs from the night shift. "I'm looking for Sherry. She didn't come home last night, and I'm worried." Arlene's expression shifted, guilt flickering across her tired features. "She didn't. Maybe she stayed at a friend's." "Arlene, I know about Javier." The silence stretched between them before Arlene sighed and stepped aside to let him in. "How much do you know?" "Enough." "How long has this been going on?" 6 months, maybe longer." Arlene poured herself coffee with shaking hands. "She swore she was going to tell you after Emma's birthday party next month. She said you two had grown apart, that you were never home anyway. And the baby?" Arlene's cup nearly slipped from her grasp. "You know about that too? Is it mine or his?" "Sherry says it's Javier's. They've been planning to start fresh. She said you'd understand eventually, that Emma would be better off with a stable family unit." Clint absorbed this information without visible reaction, but inside, the last vestige of mercy died. Sherry hadn't just cheated. She'd been planning to erase him entirely, rewriting history to make herself the victim of an absent husband. "Where are they, Arlene?" "I can't tell you that, Clint. I know you're angry, but—" "I'm not angry," Clint said quietly, and something in his tone made Arlene step back. "I'm curious. See, I found something interesting when I ran a background check on your sister's boyfriend." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph Austin had found in police records. Javier Barker being arrested 2 years ago for domestic battery against his ex-wife. "Did she tell you about this?" "About how he put Rebecca Stanley in the hospital with 3 broken ribs and a fractured orbital bone." Arlene's face went white. That can't be right. Javier would never." "There's more." Clint swiped to the next image. A restraining order filed by another ex-girlfriend, Ashley Knapp, citing stalking and harassment. And this one, where he followed a woman for 6 months after she broke up with him, sending her photos of her own children walking to school. "Stop," Arlene whispered. "Your sister is carrying the child of a man who beats women and threatens children, and she wants to hand my daughter over to him." Clint leaned forward. "So, I'm going to ask you one more time. Where are they?" Arlene was crying now, hands trembling as she reached for her purse. "The Extended Stay America on Riverside Drive. Room 237. But Clint, please don't do anything crazy. Call the police, file for custody, do this the right way." "I tried the right way for 15 years, Clint replied, standing. "Look where it got me." As he drove toward the hotel, Clint's phone rang. Austin Snyder with an update. "You're not going to believe what I found in Javier's financial records," Austin said without preamble. "Guy's in a Tony Ballard for 60 grand in gambling debts. High-interest stuff. Word is Tony's getting impatient." Tony Ballard. Clint knew that name. A loan shark who operated out of the warehouse district, rumored to have connections with some very dangerous people. This was better than he'd hoped. "There's more," Austin continued. "Javier's been using Sherry's credit cards to make payments, but he's still short. Way I figure it, he's planning to use your divorce settlement to clear his debts. Except there won't be a settlement. What are you planning, Clint? Justice. Clint ended the call and dialed another number. When the gravelly voice answered, he smiled grimly. Don Bullock? It's Clint Stout. I need to cash in that favor you owe me. Don Bullock ran a construction company that specialized in problem solving for clients who needed things done quickly and quietly. 3 years ago, Clint had provided security for Don's daughter's wedding when credible threats had been made against the family. Don had sworn he'd return the favor someday. Name it, Colonel. I need a building condemned. Make it look official, but make it happen fast. Which building? Extended Stay America, Riverside Drive. The whole place needs to be evacuated by tomorrow night. Consider it done. Anything else? Not yet. But Don? When I call again, things might get messy. Messier the better, as far as I'm concerned. That family still owes you. As Clint hung up, he caught sight of himself in the rearview mirror. His gray eyes had taken on the flat, predatory look that had once made enemy combatants surrender without firing a shot. Sherry and Javier thought they were playing chess with a weakened warrior. They were about to learn they'd declared war on a man who'd perfected the art of destroying enemies without leaving fingerprints. Chapter 3. The Noose Tightens. By evening, Clint had positioned himself in the parking lot across from the Extended Stay America, watching through military-grade binoculars as his wife and her lover moved around room 237 like they owned the world. Through the thin curtains, he could see them unpacking boxes, hanging pictures, playing house with his money and his future. Vernon Benjamin's surveillance report had been thorough. They'd been living there for 3 weeks, telling the front desk they were relocating for work. Javier had registered under a false name, paying cash for extended stays while using Sherry's credit cards for everything else. The third person Vernon had mentioned turned out to be Beth Mooney, a family lawyer specializing in complex custody arrangements. From her business cards scattered on the hotel room table, she was clearly helping them navigate the legal maze of stripping Clint of his parental rights while maximizing Sherry's financial gain in the divorce. Clint's phone buzzed with a text from Don Bullock. Health inspector finds serious code violations tomorrow at 2 p.m. Building evacuation by 6 p.m. Your friends will need new accommodations. Perfect timing. While Sherry and Javier scrambled to find new housing, Clint would be implementing the next phase of his plan. His phone rang. Sherry's number. Clint? Thank God you answered. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Where's my daughter, Sherry? She's safe. She's with my mother. But we need to talk. I know you found the papers, and I can explain everything. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at Romano's restaurant tomorrow at 7. The place where we had our first date. We can work this out like civilized adults. Clint almost laughed. She was still trying to manipulate him, appealing to sentiment and nostalgia. Will Javier be joining us? A pause. This is between you and me, Clint. Please. I owe you that much. You owe me a lot more than that. But fine. Romano's at 7. After hanging up, Clint spent the next several hours in his workshop, preparing tools he hoped he wouldn't need, but knew he probably would. His military training had taught him that the best plans had multiple contingencies, and the deadliest enemies were often the ones who underestimated their opponents. At midnight, he made another call. Tony Ballard's office. The voice was professionally neutral, but carried undertones of barely controlled violence. I need to speak with Mr. Ballard about Javier Barker's account. Who's calling? Someone with information about Mr. Barker's ability to pay his debts. 5 minutes later, Tony Ballard himself came on the line. You got my attention. Talk. Javier Barker is about to come into a significant amount of money through a divorce settlement. But there are complications that might affect his ability to pay you. What kind of complications? The kind where the husband fights back, legally and otherwise. A long pause. You the husband? I am. And you're calling me because? Because I want to make sure Javier pays his debts in full before he disappears with money that doesn't belong to him. Interesting. You got a proposal. I might. Are you available to meet tomorrow night? After I settle some business with my wife. I'll send you an address. Come alone. And bring proof of whatever you're claiming about Barker's finances. After securing the meeting with Tony Ballard, Clint turned his attention to the legal battlefield. He'd spent the morning consulting with his own attorney, Glenn Buchanan, a ruthless divorce lawyer who specialized in protecting high-net-worth individuals from predatory spouses. The relinquishment form is worthless without your signature, Glenn assured him. But the financial evidence you've gathered shows clear intent to defraud. We can not only block the adoption, but pursue criminal charges for theft and fraud. I don't want criminal charges yet, Clint said. I want to control the timing. What exactly are you planning, Clint? I'm going to give them exactly what they think they want, and then I'm going to take it all away. The next afternoon, Clint watched from his surveillance position as health inspectors swarmed the extended stay America. By 4 p.m., official notices were posted on every door. Immediate evacuation due to structural integrity concerns and potential asbestos contamination. He smiled as he watched Sherry and Javier frantically packing their belongings, Beth Mooney helping them carry boxes to Javier's pickup truck. They had no idea this was just the opening move. At 6:30 p.m., Clint arrived at Romano's wearing his best suit and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sherry was already there, seated in a corner booth wearing a blue dress he'd bought her for their anniversary last year. She looked nervous but determined, her hands protectively covering her still flat stomach. "You came," she said as he sat down. "I said I would. Clint, I know how this looks, but you have to understand, we weren't happy. We haven't been happy for years. You're never home, and when you are, it's like you're still deployed somewhere else. So you decided to steal my daughter and my money. It's not stealing, it's restructuring. Emma needs stability, and I can give her that with Javier. He loves children. He wants to be a real father to her." Clint leaned back, studying his wife's face. "Tell me about Javier's first wife." Sherry's expression faltered. "What about her?" "Rebecca Stanley, the one he put in the hospital. That was a misunderstanding. She was abusive too." Javier was defending himself. "And Ashley Knapp? Was she abusive when he stalked her for 6 months?" Sherry's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. "You don't understand Javier like I do. He's changed. People can change." "You're right," Clint said quietly. "People can change. I used to believe in forgiveness, in second chances, in working things out. But sitting here, watching you lie to my face while carrying another man's child and planning to steal my daughter, I've changed too." "Clint, please. You want to know what I discovered today, Sherry? Javier owes $60,000 to Tony Ballard." "Know who Tony Ballard is?" The color drained from Sherry's face. "He's the kind of man who breaks kneecaps when people don't pay their debts. And your boyfriend has been using your credit cards, my money, to make payments. But he's still short, which means you and Emma were never his endgame. You were his exit strategy." Sherry was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You're lying. Javier loves me. Maybe he does, but love doesn't pay gambling debts." Clint stood up. "You have 24 hours to bring Emma home and tear up those relinquishment papers. If you don't, I'm going to stop playing defense and start playing offense." "And Sherry? You've never seen me play offense." As he walked toward the door, Sherry called after him. "What does that mean?" "Clint, what are you going to do?" He turned back one last time as she flinched at the expression on his face. "I'm going to remind you why Marines don't lose wars." Chapter 4. The Art of War. The abandoned warehouse on the east side of town looked like every cliché from crime movies, but Tony Ballard's operation was anything but amateur. Clint arrived precisely at 10 p.m., carrying a briefcase filled with financial documents that would either start a partnership or get him killed. 2 men patted him down professionally before escorting him to an office that managed to be both Spartan and intimidating. Tony Ballard himself was smaller than Clint had expected, maybe 5'8" with graying hair and soft hands. But his eyes held the kind of intelligence that had built criminal empires without ever getting caught. "Colonel Stout," Tony said, gesturing to a chair. "I did some checking after your call. Impressive military record. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, commendations for operations I'm not supposed to know about. What's a war hero doing in my office? Learning that wars don't end when you come home." Tony laughed. "Fair enough. Show me what you brought." Clint opened the briefcase, spreading out bank statements, credit card records, and hotel receipts. Javier Barker has been systematically draining my account for 6 months. Total theft of approximately $47,000, plus interest on your loan brings his debt to roughly $107,000. Your math's good. Continue. My wife thinks she's getting half my assets in the divorce, about $1.2 million. Javier thinks he's getting a fresh start and a clean slate. They're both wrong. Because I'm going to destroy them first. Professionally, financially, and personally. But I need Javier alive long enough to suffer. Tony leaned back in his chair. You want me to postpone collection? I want you to accelerate it. But surgically, apply pressure at exactly the right moments to maximize psychological damage. And what do I get out of this arrangement? Clint pulled out another document. The deed to a commercial property downtown that he'd inherited from his father. This building is worth $300,000. Consider it payment for services rendered. Tony examined the deed carefully. You're serious about this? Dead serious. What kind of services are we talking about? Surveillance. Intimidation. Maybe some property damage if things escalate. Nothing that can be traced back to you or me. And if Barker can't pay even after you destroy him, then you collect whatever assets remain. But Tony, I guarantee you'll get paid. They shook hands, and Clint felt another piece of his old life fall away. He'd just allied himself with a criminal to destroy his wife and her lover. 6 months ago, the thought would have horrified him. Now, it felt like tactical necessity. The next morning, Clint implemented phase 2 of his plan. He called his bank and reported the theft of Sherry's credit cards, providing evidence of unauthorized charges. By noon, her cards were frozen and flagged for fraud investigation. Then he called their joint credit card companies and requested immediate closure of all accounts due to suspicious activity and identity theft concerns. The customer service representatives were sympathetic to a concerned husband trying to protect his family's finances. His final call was to their mortgage company. As the primary borrower, he had the right to request a comprehensive financial audit of all account holders. He provided evidence of Sherry's suspicious spending patterns and suggested she might be a victim of financial elder abuse or coercion. By 3 p.m., Sherry's phone was buzzing with calls from confused customer service representatives, fraud investigators, and automated systems alerting her to account suspensions. Clint was in his home office when she finally called him, her voice sharp with panic. What did you do? All my cards are frozen, and the bank is saying there's a fraud investigation. I protected our assets from further theft. This is insane. I need those cards. I have expenses, doctor's appointments. You should have thought of that before you decided to steal from me. Clint, please. I'm pregnant. I need prenatal care. Then come home. Bring Emma. Tear up the relinquishment papers, and we'll discuss your medical needs. I can't. Javier needs me. We're building something together. Where are you staying since the hotel kicked you out? A long pause. That's none of your business. Actually, it is. I own half of everything you purchase, including whatever flop house you're hiding in. And Sherry? I know about Javier's gambling debts. Do you really think Tony Ballard is going to wait much longer for his money? You don't know what you're talking about. Ask Javier about Rebecca Stanley's medical bills. Ask him about the restraining orders. Ask him why he's really interested in a pregnant woman with access to divorce settlement money. The line went dead. Clint smiled grimly and turned his attention to the next phase, isolating Sherry from her support network. He started with her job. Sherry worked as a marketing coordinator for a family-owned advertising agency run by the Thomas family. Chris Thomas, the owner, was a devout Catholic who valued family stability and had always spoken proudly of his married employees. Clint made an appointment under the pretense of possibly hiring the agency for his security consulting business. Clint, good to see you, Chris said warmly as they sat in his office. How's Sherry? We've been worried about her lately. She's been calling in sick a lot, and when she is here, she seems distracted. That's actually what I wanted to discuss, Clint said. Sherry's been having some personal issues that might affect her work performance. Is everything okay at home? She's been involved with another man. They're living together now, and she's pregnant with a child. I'm filing for divorce. Chris's expression shifted from concern to shock. I had no idea. Clint, I'm so sorry. The thing is, this man she's involved with, Javier Barker, has some serious problems. Gambling debts, history of domestic violence, connections to some dangerous people. I'm worried about Sherry's safety, but I'm also worried about the liability this might create for your company. What kind of liability? Clint pulled out copies of Javier's arrest records. If something happens to Sherry at work, or if her personal problems start affecting client relationships, it could reflect poorly on the agency. Chris studied the documents with growing alarm. This man beat his ex-wife, hospitalized her, and there's more. Clint showed him the restraining order. I'm not trying to get Sherry fired, Chris. I'm trying to protect everyone involved. Maybe she needs some time off to figure out her situation. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, Chris said slowly. I'll have to discuss this with HR, but yes, I think a leave of absence might be best for everyone. By 5 p.m., Sherry had received a call requesting she take indefinite unpaid leave pending resolution of her personal circumstances. Clint's phone rang almost immediately. You bastard. You got me fired. I protected your employer from liability. They made their own decision. How am I supposed to support myself? Support Emma? Come home, Sherry. This all stops when you come home. Never. Then you'd better hope Javier has a solution. Because tomorrow, things get worse. As he hung up, Clint felt a cold satisfaction settle in his chest. He was systematically dismantling the life Sherry and Javier had tried to build on the ruins of his family. And this was just the beginning. His phone buzzed with a text from Tony Ballard. Barker missed today's payment. Applied first-level pressure. He's looking for you. Clint smiled. Let Javier come looking. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Chapter 5. Pressure Points. Javier Barker found Clint at the gun range the next evening, his face flushed with anger and desperation. Clint had been expecting this confrontation. In fact, he'd made sure to be in a public place with security cameras when it happened. You son of a bitch. Javier stormed across the range, ignoring the shocked looks from other shooters. You think you can destroy people's lives because you can't handle being divorced? Clint calmly finished loading his .45, then turned to face Javier. Even in civilian clothes, his military bearing was unmistakable, shoulders squared, weight balanced, hands relaxed but ready. Javier was bigger, maybe 20 pounds heavier, but he carried himself like a man who'd never been in a real fight. Mr. Barker, Clint said calmly, I was wondering when we'd meet face to face. Cut the bullshit. I know you're behind Sherry's cards getting frozen, her losing her job, all of it. I protected my assets from theft and warned her employer about potential liability issues. Everything I did was legal. You ruined her life out of spite. I corrected some financial irregularities. Clint set down his weapon and faced Javier fully. Tell me, how much of my money have you spent on gambling? Javier's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. $47,000 from our joint accounts, plus whatever you charged to her credit cards. Tony Ballard appreciates customers who pay their debts promptly. You talked to Tony? Fear crept into Javier's voice. We're practically business partners now. He's very interested in your payment schedule. Javier lunged forward, grabbing Clint's shirt. You bastard. You don't know what you're messing with. The confrontation lasted exactly 3 seconds. Clint stepped back, broke Javier's grip with a simple arm technique, and applied pressure to a nerve cluster in Javier's shoulder that dropped him to his knees. Don't, Clint said quietly, loud enough for the security cameras to pick up. Touch me. Again. He released the pressure, and Javier stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder. Here's what's going to happen, Clint continued conversationally. You're going to stay away from my daughter. You're going to convince Sherry to come home, and you're going to find a way to pay your debts without using money you stole from me. And if I don't, Clint smiled, and Javier involuntarily stepped back. Then I stopped being reasonable. After Javier left, Clint made a call to Vernon Benjamin. I need 24/7 surveillance on both targets. Something's about to break, and I want documentation of everything. Already on it, Colonel. Interesting development. They moved into a cheap motel on Highway 9 after her cards got frozen. Barker's been making desperate phone calls all day, trying to arrange loans. Any luck? Not so far. Word's gotten around about his situation. Nobody wants to loan money to a man with Tony Ballard breathing down his neck. That evening, Clint received an unexpected visitor. Lucy Hanson, Sherry's mother, stood on his doorstep holding Emma's hand. The 4-year-old broke free and ran into his arms. "Daddy, I missed you. I missed you too, princess." Clint held his daughter tight, inhaling the scent of her shampoo and feeling some of the cold fury in his chest warm slightly. Lucy Hanson looked older than her 62 years, stress lines etched deep around her eyes. "We need to talk, Clint." After putting Emma to bed, they sat in the living room where this nightmare had started 3 days ago. "Sherry came to see Emma today," Lucy began. "She was different, desperate. She begged me to sign some papers giving her temporary custody." "Did you?" "Of course not." "But Clint," she's scared. Really scared. She said people are threatening her, that you've turned everyone against her. "I haven't turned anyone against her. I've simply made sure people know who they're dealing with." "What does that mean?" Clint handed her the folder of documents he compiled on Javier. Arrest records, restraining orders, financial records showing the gambling debts. Lucy read through them slowly, her face growing paler with each page. "Oh my God. Sherry doesn't know about this, does she?" "She knows. I told her. She chose not to believe it. She's pregnant, Clint. Whatever she's done, that baby didn't ask for this. That baby isn't my problem." "How can you say that? You loved Sherry once." "I loved the woman I thought she was. The woman who disappeared when she decided to steal my daughter and build a life with a man who beats women." Lucy was crying now. "There has to be another way. Some compromise." "I offered her a compromise. Come home, give up the affair, tear up the relinquishment papers. She refused." "What are you going to do?" Clint met her eyes, and she flinched at what she saw there. "I'm going to win." Later that night, after Lucy left with promises to keep Emma safe, Clint received a call from Tony Ballard. "Your boy Barker just tried to rob a convenience store," Tony reported. "Got away with maybe $300 before the cops showed up. He's sitting in county lockup right now. Bail set at $5,000. Cash only. Perfect. Make sure nobody posts it for him. Already handled. Had a word with the bail bondsman in town. Barker's credit isn't good enough for their services." Clint hung up and immediately called Sherry. "Javier's in jail," he said without preamble. "What? That's impossible. He went to meet with a potential client. He robbed a convenience store for $300 because he's desperate to pay his gambling debts." "You're lying. Call the county jail. Booking number 47291. Armed robbery, resisting arrest." The line went quiet except for Sherry's ragged breathing. "Sherry, this is what your new life looks like. Your boyfriend is a criminal who will steal, fight, and hurt people when he's desperate. And he's going to get more desperate. I can bail him out. With what money? I froze your cards, remember? And I know your checking account has maybe $400 in it. My mother. Your mother knows about Javier's history now. She's not giving you money to bail out a domestic abuser. Clint, please. I'll do anything. Just help him. Anything. Yes. Come home tonight. Bring the relinquishment papers and tear them up in front of me. Give me full custody of Emma, and I'll post Javier's bail." I can't do that." "Then I guess you've made your choice." As he hung up, Clint felt another piece of his former self crumble away. He'd just used his wife's desperation against her, manipulated her emotions to serve his own ends. 3 days ago, the thought would have disgusted him. Now it felt like winning. Chapter 6. The Point of No Return. The next morning brought unexpected complications. Glenn Buchanan called with news that made Clint's blood run cold. "Sherry's filed an emergency restraining order against you," Glenn reported. "Claims you threatened her and Javier with physical violence. She's also petitioned for emergency custody of Emma, citing concerns about your mental state." "Based on what evidence?" "Security footage from the gun range showing your altercation with Barker. She's claiming you assaulted him and made threats." Clint closed his eyes, recognizing his tactical error. "When's the hearing?" "This afternoon at 2 p.m. Judge Hamilton is presiding." Judge Hamilton. Clint knew him by reputation. A family court judge with traditional values who favored mothers in custody disputes and took domestic violence allegations seriously. "Glenn, I need you to do something." File our own emergency motion for full custody. Include everything we have on Javier's criminal history and Sherry's financial theft. That's playing nuclear, Clint. Once we cross that line. The line was crossed when she tried to steal my daughter. File it. An hour later, Clint was sitting in his lawyer's office reviewing their strategy when Austin Snyder called with intel that changed everything. You need to hear this, Austin said. I've been monitoring Sherry's phone calls from jail visits. She and Javier are planning to run. What? Soon as she gets him out, they're leaving town. Talked about heading to Mexico, maybe Central America. She mentioned having access to money you don't know about. Clint felt ice form in his veins. What money? Life insurance policy on you. Apparently, she's been paying premiums on $1 million policy for the past year. Made some comment about how it would be easier if you had an accident before the divorce was finalized. The room spun slightly. His wife wasn't just planning to steal his daughter and money. She was planning to kill him. Austin, I need you to hack into Sherry's email accounts. All of them. Find me evidence of this life insurance policy and any communication about harming me. Clint, that's illegal. So, is conspiracy to commit murder. Do it. While Austin worked on digital evidence, Clint made another call to Tony Ballard. Change of plans, he said when Tony answered. I need Javier out of jail today. Thought you wanted him locked up. I need him where I can watch him. How quickly can you arrange bail? Give me an hour. By noon, Clint had positioned himself across from the county jail with a clear view of the exit. Vernon Benjamin was in a second vehicle, ready to begin tracking. When Javier walked out at 12:47 p.m., he immediately called someone on his cell phone. The conversation was brief and urgent. Then Javier climbed into a waiting taxi. Stay with him, Clint radioed to Vernon. I'm going to the courthouse. The emergency custody hearing was a war zone. Sherry's lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Claudia Casey, painted Clint as an unstable veteran with violent tendencies who'd used his military training to intimidate and threaten her client. Your Honor, Claudia argued, Colonel Stout has systematically destroyed my client's financial stability, gotten her fired from her job, and used his connections with known criminals to harass her boyfriend. The security footage clearly shows him assaulting Mr. Barker at a gun range. Glenn Buchanan fired back with their evidence of Sherry's theft, Javier's criminal history, and the attempted relinquishment of parental rights. Your Honor, Mrs. Stout has stolen nearly $50,000 from joint accounts, attempted to illegally surrender custody of their child, and is romantically involved with a man who has a documented history of domestic violence and gambling addiction. Judge Hamilton reviewed the evidence with growing concern. This is one of the most disturbing cases I've seen in 20 years on the bench. Both parties seem to have engaged in questionable behavior. Your Honor, Glenn continued, we have additional evidence that Mrs. Stout and Mr. Barker are planning to flee the jurisdiction with the child. That's ridiculous, Claudia protested. Glenn handed the judge a document Austin had found in Sherry's email. Confirmation of a large life insurance policy on Clint with Sherry as the sole beneficiary. This policy was purchased secretly 1 year ago, Glenn explained. Combined with the financial theft and attempted custody manipulation, it suggests a pattern of premeditated fraud. Judge Hamilton studied the document carefully. Mrs. Stout, did you purchase a life insurance policy on your husband without his knowledge? Sherry looked trapped. It was a financial planning decision, protecting our family's future, while simultaneously draining joint accounts and planning to relocate with another man's child. It's not what it looks like. Here's what I'm ordering, Judge Hamilton said grimly. Temporary custody of Emma Stout is awarded to Colonel Stout. Mrs. Stout is granted supervised visitation only, and neither she nor Mr. Barker are permitted to remove the child from this jurisdiction. Both parties are enjoined from further financial manipulation of joint assets. Clint felt a surge of victory, but it was short-lived. As they left the courthouse, Claudia Casey pulled Glenn aside. Tell your client this isn't over, she said quietly. We're going to appeal, and we're going to investigate every move he's made in the past week. If he's done anything illegal, and I suspect he has, we'll expose it. Glenn relayed the threat as they walked to their cars. How much trouble are we in? Clint asked. Depends on what you've actually done. Clint, I need to ask, Have you broken any laws in your campaign against Sherry and Javier? Clint thought about his partnership with Tony Ballard, the building condemnation he'd arranged, the financial manipulation, the illegal surveillance. Define broken. That's what I was afraid of. As Clint drove home to collect Emma from his mother-in-law's house, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you won today? Wait until tonight. Some games have deadly consequences. Clint stared at the message, recognizing it for what it was, a declaration of war. He'd spent 3 days systematically destroying his wife's life, believing he was fighting for justice. Now he realized he'd been fighting for survival all along. The real battle was just beginning. Chapter 7. Blood and Betrayal. The attack came at 11:47 p.m., precisely when Clint's security system showed its only blind spot. 3 men in black tactical gear approached his house through the neighbor's backyard, moving with military precision that told him these weren't street thugs. They were professionals. Clint had been expecting this since receiving the threatening text. He'd sent Emma to stay with his sister in another state, activated his home's defensive systems, and prepared for siege warfare. The first man through the patio door triggered a motion sensor that activated floodlights and began recording to cloud storage. The second man disabled the main alarm panel, but not before Clint received the alert on his secure phone. He was waiting in the living room, dressed in full tactical gear with night vision goggles, when they entered through the front door. Clint Stout. The lead man's voice was professionally calm. We need to talk. I'm listening. Our employer wants to discuss a business proposition. You've been making life difficult for some people, and that's affecting other business interests. Let me guess. Tony Ballard decided I was more trouble than Javier's debt was worth. Mr. Ballard appreciates your cooperation in the matter of Mr. Barker's obligations. However, your wife has made him a more attractive offer. Clint felt pieces clicking together. The life insurance policy. $1 million, minus Mr. Ballard's fee for services rendered. Mrs. Stout gets to start fresh with her boyfriend, and everyone's debts are paid. Except I'd be dead. Regrettably, yes. Home invasion gone wrong. Very tragic. Clint had faced death before, but never at the hands of hired killers sent by his own wife. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound could. Counteroffer, he said quietly. We're listening. You kill Sherry and Javier instead. I'll pay you double whatever she offered. The lead man tilted his head, considering. You'd pay $2 million to kill your wife. I'd pay it to eliminate a threat to my daughter's safety. Interesting, but we've already accepted Mrs. Stout's contract. Then you've made a tactical error. Clint triggered the remote detonator he'd been holding, and the room exploded in light and sound as military-grade flashbangs erupted from hidden positions throughout the house. He'd bought the devices from Don Bullock, along with other equipment that technically wasn't available to civilians. The 3 killers were temporarily blinded and disoriented, but their training kicked in quickly. They spread out, seeking cover while their vision cleared. Clint was already moving, using routes he'd planned and practiced. The house was his terrain, and he knew every sight line, every angle, every advantage. The first man died quietly in the kitchen, a knife between his ribs before he knew Clint was behind him. The second lasted longer, getting off 3 shots that shattered expensive pottery but missed their target. The third man was the most dangerous, a professional who adapted quickly to changing circumstances. They fought hand-to-hand in the living room, destroying furniture and leaving blood on the walls. When it was over, Clint stood amid the wreckage of his home, 3 bodies at his feet and the taste of copper in his mouth. He'd killed men before, but never in his own living room, never because his wife had hired them to murder him. He was still standing there when his phone rang. Sherry's number. It's done, he answered. What? Who is this? It's your husband, the one who's supposed to be dead right now. Clint? I don't understand. Your hit squad failed, Sherry. All 3 of them are dead. The silence on the other end was absolute. I know about the life insurance policy, Clint continued. I know you hired Tony Ballard to kill me. I know everything. You can't prove any of that. I don't need to prove it. I just need to survive it. Clint, please. You don't understand. Javier said you're going to kill us both. He said the only way to protect the baby was to stop lying to me. Clint's voice echoed through the destroyed room. I have recordings of your conversations with Ballard. I have financial records showing you paid him $50,000, money you stole from our joint accounts, to arrange my murder. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. We were just scared. You were destroying everything. And Javier said, Javier's dead too. Another silence. What? I killed him an hour ago, before your friends arrived. Did you really think I'd wait for you to take the initiative? It was a lie, but Clint needed Sherry to believe she was completely alone now, that every ally was gone, every safety net removed. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a father protecting his daughter from people who wanted to kill him for insurance money. Clint hung up and immediately called Glenn Buchanan. I need you at my house now. Bring a criminal defense attorney. The good kind. Clint, what happened? 3 men just tried to kill me. They're all dead. And Glenn? Bring your camera. Document everything before I call the police. While waiting for his lawyer, Clint methodically photographed the crime scene, the weapons the attackers had carried, and the evidence of forced entry. His military training had included combat documentation. Sometimes proving you'd acted in self-defense was as important as surviving the attack itself. He also called Vernon Benjamin with specific instructions. Find Sherry and Javier. I want to know where they are every minute of every day. And Vernon, if they try to run, stop them. How exactly do you want me to stop them? Any way necessary. By dawn, Clint's house was crawling with police investigators, crime scene technicians, and reporters who'd caught wind of the story. The headline would read, Local security consultant kills 3 home invaders in deadly late-night attack. What the headlines wouldn't mention was the war behind the war. The systematic destruction of one family by forces that cared nothing for law, morality, or human life. Detective Simon Rutherford, the lead investigator, was a former military police officer who understood violence in ways civilian cops often didn't. This was professional work, he told Clint after examining the bodies. These weren't burglars or random criminals. Someone paid good money for this hit. Any idea who? Working on it. But Colonel, whoever wanted you dead, they're going to be very unhappy that their investment didn't pay off. As the bodies were removed and the investigators finished their work, Clint stood in his destroyed living room and faced a terrible truth. He'd won this battle, but the war was far from over. Somewhere in the city, his wife was planning her next move. And this time, she wouldn't make the mistake of hiring outside help. This time, it would be personal. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. The manhunt for Sherry and Javier lasted exactly 18 hours. Vernon Benjamin found them at a rundown motel near the airport, counting cash and discussing escape routes to non-extradition countries. But when Clint arrived at their location, he discovered they weren't alone. Through military-grade binoculars, he observed Beth Mooney, the family lawyer, helping them destroy documents in the motel's parking lot. A fourth person, a man he didn't recognize, was loading suitcases into a rental car. Who's the fourth man? Clint asked Vernon through their radio link. Run the plates, but I think it's Simon Rutherford. Clint's blood went cold. The detective investigating the home invasion was helping the people who'd orchestrated escape. How deep does this go? Deeper than we thought. I've been monitoring police communications. Rutherford's been feeding information to someone about your movements, your security measures, everything. The conspiracy was bigger than a cheating wife and her desperate boyfriend. Someone with resources and connections had been orchestrating events from the beginning. Clint made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Vernon, pull back to a safe distance and document everything. What happens next, I do alone. Clint, don't do anything stupid. I'm not going to do anything stupid. I'm going to do something necessary. He approached the motel from a blind side, using skills learned in urban warfare environments. The rental car was unlocked, and he quickly planted tracking devices and small explosive charges under the chassis, enough to disable the vehicle, not enough to kill the occupants. Then he waited. At 3:17 a.m., the 4 conspirators emerged from the motel room. Sherry was carrying a small suitcase and what appeared to be a thick envelope of documents. Javier had a duffel bag that clinked when he moved, probably containing weapons. Detective Rutherford was talking on a secure phone, coordinating something with an unknown party. Beth Mooney was destroying papers in a small fire they'd lit in the parking lot. Clint had seen enough. He triggered the first explosive as they reached the car, disabling the engine and trapping them in the parking lot. Then he stepped out of the shadows with his weapon drawn. Nobody move. Javier spun toward him, reaching for something in his jacket. Clint put 2 bullets in his chest before the man could draw his weapon. Javier! Sherry screamed, dropping to her knees beside her dying lover. Detective Rutherford, Clint said conversationally, I'm disappointed. I thought you were one of the good ones. Rutherford's hand was moving toward his service weapon. Stout, you're under arrest for... The 3rd bullet ended his sentence permanently. Beth Mooney was hyperventilating, backed against the motel wall with her hands raised. Please don't kill me. I was just providing legal services. I didn't know they were trying to murder you. What documents were you destroying? Insurance papers, financial records, adoption forms. Show me. With trembling hands, Beth retrieved a partially burned file from the fire. Clint scanned the contents by flashlight, his anger building with each page. The conspiracy went back 18 months. Sherry and Javier had been planning his murder since before Emma was born, setting up financial instruments that would transfer his wealth to them upon his death. The relinquishment papers were part of a larger plan to erase his legal connection to Emma, making it easier for them to disappear with her after his death. But the most damaging document was a medical report showing that Emma wasn't his biological daughter. DNA testing arranged by Javier had confirmed that he was Emma's real father. Sherry had been cheating far longer than anyone suspected. Clint felt something break inside him, not just his heart, but his entire sense of reality. The little girl he'd loved and protected wasn't even his daughter. Everything he believed about his family was a lie. Clint, Sherry whispered from beside Javier's body. Please, I can explain everything. Explain what? That you've been lying to me for 5 years. That you let me believe Emma was mine while planning to murder me for insurance money. Emma is yours in every way that matters. You raised her. You love her. Stop talking. Clint studied his wife's face in the dim parking lot light. She was still beautiful, still carrying herself with the confidence that had attracted him 15 years ago. But now he could see the calculating intelligence behind her eyes, the cold planning that had orchestrated years of deception. The baby you're carrying, he said quietly. Is it mine or his? Does it matter now? Yes, it's yours. I swear on Emma's life, this baby is yours. Clint looked at the chaos around him. 2 dead bodies, a terrified lawyer, his pregnant wife kneeling in blood and motor oil. He could kill them both and claim self-defense. He had justification, evidence, and the resources to make it look clean. But something held him back. Maybe it was the memory of Emma's laughter, or the thought of his unborn child, or simply the recognition that some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. Beth, he said to the lawyer, get in your car and drive away. If you ever mention what happened here, I'll find you. What about the police? Detective Rutherford died in the line of duty, attempting to arrest dangerous fugitives. Very tragic. After Beth fled, Clint turned back to Sherry. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to confess to everything, the affair, the theft, the murder conspiracy, all of it. You're going to give me full custody of Emma, and you're going to disappear. And if I don't, then I finish what your hit squad started, and I make it look like Javier killed you before I killed him. Sherry looked at the bodies around her, understanding finally that she'd lost everything. What about the baby? When it's born, we'll do a DNA test. If it's mine, you can have supervised visitation. If it's not, Clint let the implication hang in the air. You'd kill your own child? It wouldn't be my child. By dawn, the crime scene had been sanitized and the official story established. Detective Rutherford had died attempting to arrest fugitive suspects in a murder conspiracy. Javier Barker had been killed while resisting arrest. Sherry Stout had confessed to fraud, adultery, and conspiracy to commit murder. She would serve 15 years in prison, losing all parental rights and financial claims. Emma would remain with her father, never knowing the truth about her parentage. And Clint Stout would live with the knowledge that everything he believed about love, family, and loyalty had been a carefully constructed lie. Chapter 9. The Unforgiven. 2 years later, Clint stood in the visiting room of Millfield Women's Correctional Facility, watching his ex-wife through bulletproof glass. Sherry had aged badly in prison. Her hair was streaked with premature gray, and her once bright eyes had dulled to flat resignation. She was holding a baby, their son, Michael, born 3 months after the trial ended. The DNA test had confirmed Clint's paternity, but he felt no connection to the child who'd been conceived in betrayal and born in captivity. "He has your eyes," Sherry said through the intercom, holding Michael up to the glass. Clint studied the baby's face with clinical detachment. "He has eyes. That's about all I can say. Don't you want to hold him?" "No. Clint, please. I know what I did was unforgivable, but Michael is innocent. He's your son. My son died the day I learned Emma wasn't mine." The words hit Sherry like physical blows. "Emma still loves you. She asks about you every day. Emma doesn't know who I am. She thinks I'm her father. Better to keep it that way." Since the trial, Emma had been living with Clint's sister in Oregon, told that Daddy was working overseas and would visit when he could. It was a lie, but kinder than the truth, that Clint couldn't look at her without remembering everything he'd lost. "The adoption papers are ready," Sherry said quietly. "If you sign them, Michael becomes a ward of the state. He'll be adopted by a loving family. And if I don't, then he grows up visiting his mother in prison and wondering why his father never comes to see him." Clint had spent 2 years wrestling with this decision. Michael was innocent of his mother's crimes, but he was also a living reminder of the greatest betrayal in Clint's life. Every time he looked at the boy, he saw Sherry's lies, Javier's manipulation, and his own failure to protect what mattered most. "I'll sign the papers," he said finally. Sherry's composure cracked, tears streaming down her face. "How can you do this? How can you abandon your own child? The same way you abandoned yours when you decided to kill me for insurance money. I've apologized 1,000 times. I've begged for forgiveness. What more can I do?" Clint leaned forward, his gray eyes as cold as Arctic ice. "You can understand that some things can't be forgiven. Some betrayals are too deep, some lies too fundamental. You didn't just cheat on me, Sherry. You rewrote our entire history. You made me love a child who wasn't mine while planning to murder me for money. Emma was yours in every way that mattered." "Stop." Clint's voice cut through her protest like a blade. "You don't get to redefine parenthood after lying about it for 5 years. You don't get to claim emotional connections after proving that money was more important than family." He stood up, preparing to leave. "Wait," Sherry called desperately. "There's something else. Something I never told you. I don't want to hear any more lies. The life insurance policy, I never meant to go through with killing you. Javier convinced me it was the only way to pay his debts, but I was going to call it off. I swear I was." Clint turned back, studying her face for any sign of honesty. The night you killed those men, I was on my way to meet with Tony Ballard to cancel everything when you called me. Prove it." "I can't." "But Clint, you have to believe me. I loved you. I still love you." "No," Clint said quietly. "You love what I could provide. Security, money, respectability. You love the idea of me, not the reality." "That's not true. Then why did you sign those relinquishment papers for Emma? If you loved me, why were you willing to let another man adopt my daughter?" Sherry had no answer for that. As Clint walked toward the exit, she called after him one last time. "What about forgiveness? What about redemption? What about second chances?" He stopped but didn't turn around. "I used to believe in those things," he said. "I used to think that love was stronger than betrayal, that family was sacred, that people could change. You taught me otherwise. So this is it? You're going to hate me forever?" "No," Clint replied. "Hate requires emotional investment. I'm going to forget you ever existed." 6 months later, Clint received notification that the adoption had been finalized. Michael Stout was now Michael Patterson, son of a young couple in Colorado who'd been trying to have children for 8 years. Emma had also been adopted by his sister and her husband, taking their last name and slowly forgetting the man she'd once called Daddy. Clint sold his house, liquidated his assets, and disappeared into the private security world where men with his skills could work anonymously for clients who asked no questions about their pasts. He never remarried, never had other children, never allowed himself to trust another person with his heart. On quiet nights, when the weight of his choices pressed down like lead, he sometimes wondered if he'd gone too far, if his quest for justice had transformed him into something inhuman. But then he'd remember Emma crying in their living room, clutching papers that would have stolen her away from him, and he'd know that some betrayals left wounds that never healed. Some people deserved forgiveness. Others deserved exactly what they got. Clint Stout had learned to live with the difference. The Unforgiving explores the devastating consequences of betrayal and the dark places the human heart can go when love turns to vengeance. It asks difficult questions about justice, forgiveness, and whether some wounds are too deep to heal. In a world where trust is fragile and family bonds can be corrupted by greed and selfishness, sometimes the only choice left is to decide who deserves mercy and who deserves the consequences of their choices. Clint Stout chose consequences, and he never looked back. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.